Welcome to the Autoimmune Campfire.
Join us, coaches Helen and Nona, for honest, heartfelt conversations around living well with a chronic condition.
Come sit at our campfire. There's a chair waiting for you. Hey, Helen.
Hey, Nona.
How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you? How are you arriving today? We're at episode 13. Can you believe we're almost at the end of season one? One more episode to go.
I can't.
And today we are talking about bumps in the road. But first, let's talk about how we're coming into the room today.
Yeah. Eric got home from Italy and we had a very relaxed weekend in preparation for Clara's 20th birthday tomorrow. So today is her last day of classes for this term. And it is also her last day of being a teenager.
Transitions.
I know, I know. And how about you?
Happy birthday to Clara. I love that young lady. I also had a really lovely, relaxing weekend. Last week I had a bit of a cold, so I was a little snotty, and I was really looking forward to some open space. And I really did have. We got a couple things done, but yesterday my favorite thing is to herkle-derkle. You know that thing, herkle-derkling, where it's like staying in bed after you've woken up and sort of nesting with your tea and your breakfast and your books and, all the things. Anyway, I love to herkle-derkle. I'm really good at it. I didn't get up until noon, but I read and I did a little Christmas shopping and all things, but all from my bed. It was divine.
Oh my God. You know what? I have always called that having a bed picnic. And
Oh,
I used to do that all the time when I was younger. And I have not done that in years. So I kind of love that. You're inspiring me to go back to my picnic days, my bed picnic days.
right? Yes. Yeah. So anyway, it was lovely and very spacious. So I really do love that little white space, especially in December.
So this episode today is kind of it's an on the fly. Well, it's not on the fly, but this is an episode we weren't planning on having, but I think it's a really important episode. And so I want to give people some context as to why we're having an episode about what happens when we hit the bumps in the road. So do you want to go ahead and share a little bit and then we'll proceed?
Yeah. So it's probably what, a month or 6 weeks ago, and we're recording all of our episodes and generally loving life. And we both hit bumps in the road right pretty much at the same time. For me, I had some GI issues that needed to be looked into and had a sort of preliminary diagnosis that required a CT scan and further follow-up and maybe even stopping my RA meds if it was in fact confirmed diagnosis. So it sort of threw me up in a sort of soup of uncertainty and risk. And so I was really struggling with that. And Nona, do you want to talk about, what was happening for you?
Yeah, sure. So right around the same time, literally, speaking of perfect storms, right? So right around the same time, I then had my 6-month follow-up with my neurologist and had a new lesion and was super disappointed because I'm on a very high efficiency medication. I do all the right things, quote unquote. So was really feeling very it was hard to kind of navigate that. And so we canceled recording 1 week because we were both like, we are in no place to talk about this right now. And so one of the things that came out of that though is that we kept having conversations and being like, this is probably the most important episode that we can do is like, what do we do when the shit hits the fan, right? What do we do when all the things happen? Even if we've done all the practices, even if we have all the perma elements in place, what if we do all of that and then inevitably we end up in pain with a new lesion, with a flare, whatever it is, like it's going to happen.
Mhm. Yes, exactly. And, and I think the intention, I mean, I have to say, even just the way we process things is similar in some ways and different in others. You're like, "Let's record this, right, while it's fresh." And I'm like, "Oh god, I gotta process this because I don't know how it's gonna come across." I was just so tender. And then over the days as we talked, we're like, "Let's wait." And so the idea that we slotted in right before our last session was so that we'd really metabolized it, because I think what we're really talking about here is resilience. And the thing that about resilience is it's not just that you need, life gets lifey. But with an autoimmune condition, it's like the roller coaster just got turned up a little bit faster, or like, there's higher peaks and troughs, and it calls for more resilience. So would it be okay if I shared my favorite definition of resilience?
If you didn't share a definition, I wouldn't even know that we were here.
No, I'm such a geek.
I love it. I love it. It's
I
awesome.
am
Yes.
such a, as they would say in England, such a SWAT bot. Anyway, so Adam Grant, who is an organizational psychologist at Wharton, this is his definition of resilience, and I just adore it. He says, "I think about resilience as the speed and strength of your response to adversity. So when you encounter a difficulty, a hardship, a challenge, how quickly and how effectively are you able to marshal strength and either overcome that challenge or persevere in the face of it?" That's real. That's like, this is what we were dealing with when we had these adverse situations.
Yeah.
This is what we needed to muster, right? How do we marshal that strength so that, we may never overcome our autoimmune diagnoses, but can we persevere? And actually, this whole podcast is not just about persevering, it's about thriving. How can we even tip the balance where we can to thriving?
And I want to say about that definition of resilience and what you're saying is that all of the practices that we've talked about throughout this entire first season, doing those practices on an ongoing basis actually helps us to
Yes.
be more resilient. And I
Yes.
mean, I think like we think about resilience as like something that is just we have it or we don't, but we can actually nourish and nurture our capacity to be resilient.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And, it's almost, I wonder if, Nona, that's why you don't like the hack mentality, because it's almost like, okay, something goes wrong, let me hack it. But,
Yeah,
but really, what we're talking about is an ongoing investment in yourself and how you chart your course with intention.
absolutely. And doing that and doing what you need to do, investing in your well-being, investing in the life you want to have, investing in your health, investing in your sleep, investing in all of those things is actually your best protection, right? Against against things breaking you,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, for sure. Yes, for sure. So let's talk a little bit about, because I think this is one thing, we're a few weeks out from this and we can look back with our wise selves, right? And what let's talk about what was happening for us in the moment, because I think that's where people can be, oh yeah, that's, oh, I totally get that. But in the moment, here's where I am. Oh yes, we are too. So do you want to share what happens for you at first, or do you want me to share first?
I'll go first. So, um, not only so I got my MRI, I had a new lesion, and that's the first piece of information I got because, of course, you do the MRI, and then I have an app that basically gives me information about what happens before I talk to the doctor, right? So I get all this stuff, and I'm like, I have a new lesion, which is alarming in and of itself. And they also had a measure of brain volume, and it was like super low. And I'm like, what is happening here? So all that happened, and then I go to the doctor. Ugh, and look, I'm like, ugh. So I go to the doctor. Thank God I took my husband, And she's like, yeah, so this will be your new baseline since now you've been on this medication for 6 months. So they weren't terribly concerned about a new lesion, although I could tell she was like, hmm, yeah, you have a new lesion. So, I mean, she wasn't like, no big deal. This is expected. This is what it wasn't that. So that happened. And then, I was telling them about what's happening. Like my leg, I've noticed is a little weaker. Like you would never notice. Like if I walked into your kitchen, you would not notice. But I've noticed, like, and I've tripped more this year. So things have kind of like happened that are, I think, probably related to the MS. And they suggested like a device, some physical therapy, like some drugs I could go on for things. And it was very overwhelming. And so because of my bent towards, I can fix this, I can do it myself, my diet, my exercise, all the practices I do should address should keep anything bad from happening to me. Like, I really like, as much as I say on here, we don't have any control, right? Like, we can do all the things, and we can still have something bad happen. There is still a part of me that believes that if I do everything right, I'm not gonna have anything bad happen. So when something bad happens, I immediately go to, what do I need to fix? What didn't I do? How is this my fault? And I don't think that's uncommon. I think we do that to ourselves because sort of in the realm of personal development and even the world at large, it's like, well, you're just doing something wrong. That's why this happened. I do it to myself. So I basically gaslight myself. And then I go on the hunt for like, well, what do I need to do? And of course, who knows? Like, was it something related to my love of cheese? We don't know. Like like seriously, like, I need to cut out cheese, like, somehow that is gonna make all the difference in the world, gonna prevent all the bad things from happening. So I tend to go into fixing, like, I did something wrong, I need to fix it. And so that's really what I tend to do.
Thank you. Thank you, Nona, for sharing. I love hearing your processing, because it makes it feel so relatable. Because I have it very similar to you, but um I have this thing where I think I'm still trying to control it. I know I'm still trying to control it because there's a part of me that just wants to work harder, right? Well, so when I when I was dealing with all of this, I felt, actually, my dear colleague and friend Alexis calls it AFGO, another effing growth opportunity. I'm like, AFGO, another, like, come on. But I tend to get really afraid and anxious. And when my anxiety peaks, I go into overfunctioning. And so I'm on this, like, I'm reading, I'm researching, I'm making all the appointments. I'm like, everything is kind of like up a little bit high, right? A little dysregulated. And then I have this belief that if I work harder, I can get it fixed, right? So it's that fixing, but it's definitely to do with work. And then there's a part of me that is sort of like the victim part. Oh, let me just lie down here. And, like that, just really terrible. And then there's another part that's like, well, let's just keep everybody happy while this is happening because otherwise I'm not safe. So it's almost perfecting, pleasing. It can go into the victim. And and then I think what we got to remember is the part, like the overarching piece of us that's watching these. We're not any one of these, right? But at times when things happen like this, I feel like sometimes those bits of us grab the wheel and are driving the bus. And now we're it's like we're listening to music we didn't want to, and we're on a different road and we might be going driving very differently. So I just feel like it's that, how do we give ourselves enough space and grace and compassion to really let all of this settle down and listen to everything that's going on, and then make that intentional decision to move forward how we want to versus how we're sort of knee jerking through it. Your body is whispering secrets to you about the life you're here to live. Decode the messages about the joy you're meant to experience despite, or maybe because of, the condition that upended everything you thought you knew. If you're ready to make magic and meaning of your one wild and precious life, learn more about coaching with Nona at nonajordan.com.
Mm. I just want to take a deep breath with you here. I mean, 'cause it is, I mean, it's a big deal, right? I mean, it's like, and it is going to happen. That's how it's going to be. And so, how do we extend love and care to ourselves in those moments where we just want to backpedal and get away from it, you know, and not be confronted with the uncertainty of our lack of control, right?
Yes.
Like, to
Yeah.
not, and it's so hard. It's so hard.
Yeah, it really is so hard. I mean, I think one of the things that's the hardest is that we think we think we can control things, and really the only constant is change. So we've already, got ourselves our knickers in a knot over that because it's just never going to be the case. And yet how do we stay fully engaged in our lives and not try and control all the elements? That's a job.
It is. It's a journey. I mean, it is. It's a journey. I mean, and I think I even said last week, like, this to me is like the crux of why these circumstances, like autoimmune conditions that come into our life, are it's a spiritual path, right? To learn how to be with, like, how do you take care of yourself and value yourself enough to do the practices that all humans need, and we need them even more. But in addition to that, to not have expectations about what those practices will or won't do, right? And then how do you navigate the other side where you're having these moments? Like, and we talked about how it can be really hard to disrupt those patterns that are so ingrained in us in the moment. What do you say about disruption in your own process? Like, through this process, like, how did you disrupt it? Because if we go back to the Adam Grant quote, it's like, how quickly can you turn the bus around, right? Like, okay, that's not what he said, but you know what I mean? Like, how quickly do you catch it and disrupt it? Like, that is resilience. So can you tell us what happened for you that helped you disrupt that?
So I think first you have to so it's really noticing what's happening in your body versus just because I think that I can go into fight or flight very easily. And so it's being able to notice that and actually tend to my system. So whether it's slowing down enough to just, doing some breath work, there's this metaphor. It's almost like, if you pick up a piece of paper and you hold it right up to your face, now, and somebody asks you what's around you, you can't see anything, right? But then if you move it out maybe 5 inches, well, now I can see a lot of things around that. And then if you just put it down, now I can see everything. And it feels like when you get one of these diagnoses, it's like the paper is right in your face. And so you can see everything that's on the paper, but it's right here and you can't see anything else. And it's about sort of how do I move that out a little bit so I can see the whole piece. And I think the other thing that, we were going to talk about, I mean, I don't know that we've talked about it so much recently, but this whole thing about warriorship, like I'm a whatever warrior, I'm an arthritis warrior, I'm going to fight fighting the cause and whatever. And that's also a cultural piece that I don't find helpful at all. When you said this is more like a spiritual journey, that's what it feels like. It feels like getting into the depths of my soul so that I can still connect and move forward in my body. So I think that it's not just about I think it's about other expectations that are on us, like just keep fighting or just keep, a lot of things that are sort of in our psyche to be able to question, is this serving me? And how, if not, how do I pivot? But I'm super curious about how do you so it's like a spaciousness and a compassion, right? Back to mindfulness, self-kindness, common humanity. I'm not alone in this. That's really my core piece that helps me move the paper out. But what works for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing that for me really helps me to disrupt that pattern is is recognizing that that's my pattern and letting that be my pattern. It's like, of course I'm gonna do that. Of course I am. That's my oldest pathway to taking care of myself and feeling safe is taking responsibility for it and trying to fix it. So of course I feel that way. And because there's so much one of the things that I keep learning about MS in particular is literally my neurologist was like, "Well, we don't know if it's a lesion that's creating this." I have like a little blurriness in my left eye. They're like, "Well, we don't really know if that's from the MS." And like, we don't like, they're like, "We don't really know." And I'm like, wow, that is so hard for me as a controller to have something happening in my body that is largely out of my control. Like, yes, I can do all the things and that's in my control, but ultimately I don't have any control. So, recognizing my pattern helps me step back from it. It's like, "Oh, I'm just caught. I'm caught in a pattern." And oftentimes what that then leads to is sitting in my meditation chair right back there in the morning and doing a lot of grieving.
Mm, mhm.
Because first of all, it's infuriating that I can't control it, you know? And second of all, I really find that the magic is in letting myself have my feelings, not get drowned in them. I think we talked about this last time, but feeling them all the way through so I can get to that place of being settled in my body and like, well, I do everything. Like, it's like that moving the paper away, but I have to recognize the pattern and give myself space to feel the feelings I have. And then I can back the paper up.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that you brought in the grieving piece of it because that really is it wasn't on the top of my mind, but that really is something. If I don't do that, I'm stuck with the paper stuck to my nose. Do you know what I mean? Because I haven't kind of processed the emotion and I've stayed in that heightened state because all the tension is stored in my body versus felt. So I definitely love that you called that out. Another thing I was thinking about this morning was those little moments of gratitude as well, in that, I'm still breathing. I'm still, look at that leaf on that tree, just, this beautiful copper color, or, my little fluffy dog and just looking at me, or, I mean, also trying to, when I link into gratitude, it's as if it opens my scope as well. It's sort of, it's that positive emotion, that sort of widening of your senses as well. And in so many, whether it's positive psychology or in Brené Brown's body of work, everything links. When you have more gratitude, you have more joy. When you have more joy, you have more gratitude. Like they're just linked. And so to me, it's almost something that can add a little meaning into the mix, but I'm not trying to plaster that on top of the grief because that doesn't work.
No, totally. But yeah, you're completely right. I mean, it's like, oh, yeah, the gratitude. Like, and this might, I mean, I don't know. I can also get into a weird like cycle around like, well, should I be thinking that or am I like bringing more of it on myself? But like, earlier this summer, was on a walk with my family and I tripped and I fell and I really scraped my knee badly, and it was because my foot didn't lift up all the way. And of course, that happened to me before that MS happened, but it's happened more frequently. And when I worked out after that or went for a hike, I was like, I love that my legs work. Like when I do my strength workouts, like I love that I can feel the strength in my legs. I mean, and so the moment where I trip or I fall or I stumble, it actually takes me to gratitude. Like, is there and also like if I can be grateful for it, it's like, well, and are there ways that I could strengthen this, that I could, take care of it, which is why we're talking about a device for my leg to just help it strengthen. So I completely agree about gratitude. Oh, yeah, and ultimately, I think that what we've been talking about throughout this whole season is like, where do we have agency and autonomy, right? Where do we have the capacity to influence and make our lives better today without holding on to expectations for tomorrow?
Yeah, yeah. And can I throw another quote in from the fabulous Nona Jordan when we were talking to prepare for this call? And you said, self-advocacy rests on grace.
Mm.
And we
I
both
wish
just
I
went,
knew what I meant.
"Hmm."
I looked at that note and I'm like, what was I even talking about? I'm not really sure.
I
Well, how
think
did
I
that land for you? Yeah, tell
it
me.
totally lands for me because when I'm advocating from a place of panic or dysregulation, even you can tell the people on the other side of the phone or even in my family, they're all like a little bit stepping back, right? Because it's like a lot of big energy, a lot of fear energy. But when I'm coming from a place of grace,
Mm.
I can see them, they can see me. It's a different energetic interaction. So when I read it this morning, I was like, yes, if I could just get a little moment of grace before I make those calls, then it's going to make the self-advocacy work even better. It's going to make me feel like I have more sense of agency. It's going to feel like a better interaction for those who are also supporting me. Anyway, that's how I thought about it. I was like, God, she's so brilliant.
I don't even know what I was talking about. It sounds really great though, and I love that it landed like that for you. I mean, I think that's beautiful. Like when you were talking about it and how it landed for you, the thing that really strikes me is like it feels more grounded and present in your body. Like instead of like kind of that like I need you to fix this for me, it's like here I am. I'm here and I've got my own back and I'm supported and I'm going to ask for what I need. Yeah,
Yeah, really beautiful. Well, so should we transition to the lessons, the things we wanted, like that we are learning and that we wanted to share in case they're helpful for anybody else?
absolutely. Absolutely. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, okay. So the first one is slowing down to notice, which we've already talked about. So, increasing your awareness or just knowing what your habitual response is so that you can notice that message of I have to fix this or I, need to work harder, that almost pops into your head and you notice, oh, you know, there's the hook. And you can either take the hook and continue on the pattern, or what if you were to not take the hook? And what if you were to just notice what's happening and sort of settle into being okay with what's not okay to process?
Right, right. Oh god, yeah. I mean, and I really like uh, weaving into that is the next one, which is, when you can slow down and just be with what is, like just, oh wow, I'm doing this thing that I always do without trying to get rid of it. Like, that's another really cute thing that I think I always do, like, "I don't want this, I'm not gonna do that," and then it makes it worse, you know what I mean? It's like, oh my god. So, slowing down, recognizing it, and then you have room to disrupt it, and in fact, I would even say just in the noticing and naming it, you disrupt it.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like that coaching tool that we were taught. Is it notice, name, and navigate? Right? Notice is always first, right? Notice, name, navigate, and then what we're talking about is disrupt. Yeah. I love that.
And then, in part of that too, like the disruption is asking yourself what you need, right? If you notice and name, and then you can ask yourself, what do I really need right now? And most of the time, honestly, like Helen, you said, and I think this is true for me too, like when you get that information, it is a highly dysregulating situation. Like you're probably going to fight, flight, freeze, or collapse, or fawn, or do something in that realm because your nervous system is like, oh my God, I'm not safe. Right. Because I just had this happen. Like your GI tract was messed up. I have a new lesion. Oh my God. Like, of course, that's true. And so when you disrupt it, then you can ask, what do I need now?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And if I could just add on to that, sometimes I can't answer that unless I ask, what does the human that is me need? Because it's as if then I can take care of this tender body, but then I can intellectualize, I don't need anything right now because I'm going to fix this. So I have to like get it down almost like right into my body. So I'm just adding that little bit. And then the third part is remembering that this is part of the process. And Nona, you gave me this beautiful quote, which I absolutely love. So do you want to read it or do you want me to read it?
Oh, you can read it.
I can read it. Okay. It's a quote from the Buddha saying, praise and blame, gain and loss, pleasure and sorrow come and go like the wind. To be happy, rest like the giant tree in the midst of them all. So it's that thing that when things are going well, it's going to pass. When things are going poorly, it's going to pass. Basically, the only thing that's certain is impermanence. And so it's really about how do we navigate the ups and downs and really accept that life will change. And when we try and control it, usually doesn't work out so well. It's just, acceptance feels so much better to me just in my physical body than when I'm trying to control outcomes that are uncontrollable.
Right. And not, I just want to say this too, because I think sometimes when people think of the word surrender, they think of resignation, just like, oh, well, but that, no, like just acceptance and still taking good care of yourself, still doing the things that fill you up and feel good and help you thrive on the day to day, without holding on to the idea that somehow it's going to create certain outcomes.
Yes, yeah, and I did have a friend tell me something which I thought was really funny because you mentioned this sort of really this can feel like a spiritual journey, right? And, she gave me this image of it's as if, if you believe in coming into this might be a bit woo, coming into this world, having a soul contract, right? And that even in us, like our human suffering, our soul, she said, imagine your soul just rubbing her hands together because she's like, well, get to the good stuff.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yes.
And so sometimes I think about just a little lightness to kind of imagine, even if there's part of me that's like shaking my fist at that rubbing their hands together because I would like an easier ride.
Totally, totally. Oh,
Mhm.
so good.
Yeah,
So good.
so good. Mhm.
Oh, so thank you all for being here, Helen. Thank you for being here and having this conversation with me and in front of all the listeners. And next time, we have a really special treat for you guys. It probably won't drop right after this, a week after this, but it might take a little longer because I'm going to Norway. But we are going to have our husbands on, and they are going to talk about their experiences as the diagnosis happened, right? Like, so I'm really excited for this conversation, and for Rob and Eric to see each other again.
I know. I can't wait. I can't wait. And then please follow us so you don't miss out on an episode.
Mhm.
Rate us. We welcome any comments or feedback in Substack. We love to hear from you. In fact, if you have left us a comment, you'll see that we do respond.
Mhm.
And we are open to connecting, and we welcome you to this campfire.
Did you enjoy this campfire conversation? Please rate our podcast wherever you're listening to light the way for others to find the Autoimmune Campfire. The information provided on the Autoimmune Campfire is for educational or informational purposes only. It is not intended nor implied as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always, always consult your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you might have regarding a medical condition or treatment plan. The Autoimmune Campfire does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned on this site or podcast. Recording and editing wizardry by Make Your Day Richer. Thanks for joining Helen and I around the campfire.